episode of the UFOs Modcast, where we bring together moderators from the UFOs subreddit to discuss the top voted posts of the month. With a subscriber base of over 3 million, UFOs is the largest online forum for UFO enthusiasts and researchers alike. In each episode, we cover trending topics chosen by the community and dive into sightings, reports, and conversations shaping UFO discourse. I am your host, DoeDoeBear, and longtime enthusiast with a spiritual take on the origins of UAP. I'm joined by Stinger, who's a cybersecurity expert with a deep interest in the UFO phenomena since 2003. Also joined by VCA Master, an experienced moderator and close encounter witness with a curious yet skeptical approach. And lastly, but not least, Debunks, tech enthusiast focused on existential questions and video stabilization for analysis. So without further ado, let's go into the top 5 posts of November. The first one, titled Full 10-minute Video Showing Glowing Multicolored UAP Orbs Outside a Military Base in Afghanistan. The orbs are then shot with a missile and are completely unaffected. The video is somewhat infamous, but I've only seen a 60-second or so version posted here before. There are usually comments along the lines of, these are training targets. However, in this full 10-minute version, you can see that the camera switches from FLIR to normal vision, revealing that these are multicolored glowing orbs that move in a rigid spatial relationship with each other.
I didn't see multicolor personally. That was just my take on it. I do want to say that I think the important context for so-called dripping UAPs is definitely there. There have been cases like Council Bluffs, Iowa, Delphos, Kansas, and of course Maury Island, where material has dripped off of UAPs and in some cases even been recovered or interacted with. So that precedent does exist, but I don't think that's what we're seeing here. Maybe we can go into it a little more, but these look and behave exactly like flares on parachutes in my assessment.
Yeah, I remember this video came up a few years ago, and the shorter version. And I did do some time compression of the video so that you could really see them just going down together, pretty much like flares. I will say that at around 7 minutes in the video, it does go to color, and it kind of changes from like red, orangish, purplish, but I would put that all well within the spectrum of flares.
I know I did put a little box around one. I ended up tracking 2 of them, the ones toward the end, and then you can kind of see them rocking back and forth. And I had the square outline of it, so it does look like it could be attached from above because it has this pendulum motion. But I tracked the left one, so it's slightly exaggerated in my copy, but I could see that it was making that swaying motion.
I looked at specifically infrared flares. I just did like a Google search for like infrared flares or something like that. And one of the first results is these Northrop Grumman LUU parachute flares. And it has a stat sheet for them and shows that the visible ones can burn for up to 4 minutes and the infrared ones can burn for up to 7 minutes. This was an 8-minute video. And I believe that we see 2 sets of them drop because there's one set that goes behind the hill, and then there's another one that appears. OP also talks about this idea that like a missile hit the UAPs. I think that the explanation that's been suggested that this is not a missile, but an A-10 Warthog actually releasing countermeasures in an exercise makes more sense. You actually see the chaff start to be released slightly ahead of the second impact, and the speed, commenters noted that the speed at which the object that is moving that intersects with the flares is moving too slow to be a missile. And if you watch the full video, it actually finds the A-10 Warthog later, and you can see very clearly that it's a plane that's flying around in the area. I think that this is a military exercise in Afghanistan with parachute flares and an A-10 Warthog releasing chaff or other countermeasures. It's infrared, so it might not particularly be chaff. It might be some type of infrared countermeasure.
it would be pretty wild for one missile to strike multiple targets. It's a pretty cool missile. I don't think it is.
Yeah, there was some speculation that like if it was a missile, maybe it had the warhead disabled, which is why it was able to go like through the one thing and into the other. And then people said, "Oh no, it's just going through the flare." And then like, why did the flare still exist? I think the flare is just a marker, like a target for the A-10 to try and know where to release the groups of chaff.
I agree with that assessment. I would want it to be kind of anomalous, but it seems that most things are pointing toward it not being, because I don't see many observables. The only one, there's no obvious means of propulsion, maybe, but it could like when you speed it up, it is falling at a rate.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the top comment here is somebody that says, my whole squad and me saw something very similar in southern Afghan in 2013. I have chills watching this, also kind of relieved, thought we were all just super tired and having a hallucination. That, and, commenter thinks it's anomalous, and that they might have experience. I imagine they sound like they're from the military if they were in Afghan in 2013 and they have a squad. So the fact that they would look at that and not immediately also think it's flares like you guys kind of piques my interest a little bit. But if they are falling at a slow rate, then obviously that means that's probably something prosaic.
I don't know what that commenter saw. That commenter could have seen a genuine UAP. I wish we had video of that to analyze. Yeah. Perhaps what that commenter saw was stationary and dripping molten material. Like, that would be really cool. I always give experiencers trust. So I trust that what this person saw, they're describing accurately. And it may have been something that looks similar, or it may have been something that looks identical. My hope is that it's something similar and that it's a genuine UAP and not a flare. And that this person is describing a really cool experience they had.
Yeah, and then they weren't alone with it, because the second top comment on there is somebody else saying, myself and one other saw exactly this in Afghanistan. The difference was that they shot up into the sky in sequence, one after another. We both acknowledged that what we saw and agreed we wouldn't tell anyone else because we'd get laughed at. Edit, due to people saying flares, 4 illuminated dots appeared in the sky. They appeared and moved in unison, descended slowly. I actually thought it was flares myself to begin with. They then stopped around 100 to 150 meters altitude and hovered for a couple of minutes, looking like they were moving in small circles. They then gained elevation faster than anything I've ever seen move. Literally, it was like a streak of light. They disappeared either through cloud cover or lights were put out. My eyes were open to a few things at night, and I became a more open-minded person. So it's interesting you had the first two, or the two top comments of this post of people kind of saying that they've seen similar things, and then that second comment are kind of addressing the propulsion thing of non-prosaic movement. I just think it's interesting that apparently Afghanistan might be a hot spot.
Yeah, there's certainly UFOs that have been seen in Afghanistan, and I think this goes to emphasize that each case is unique, should be considered, on its own and in context, because sure, there's real UFOs that look somewhat like this, and there's flares, and military personnel have different experience and specialties. So
that's true.
There's all kinds of people that may have very limited experience, if any, with flares, particularly flares with, an exercise with a warthog shooting off chaff and stuff. Like, there's a lot of variables. Yeah, I don't necessarily discount those guys.
There's also precedent for UFOs in war zones and military operating areas. The best examples are from UFOs and Nukes by Robert Hastings, where he talks about UFOs appearing over nuclear missiles. But they do seem to be interested, assuming that there's intelligence behind them, assuming that this intelligence could be interested in human conflict. Yeah, food. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say Foo Fighters, because that's what's intriguing, because that was during World War I. Is that correct? Where they started spotting World War II. So it's interesting because it seemed like war didn't really have that many planes before then. So we were actually more in the sky. Some people have said, and of course I wasn't alive back then, but I find those cases very interesting.
All right, well, we can go on to the next post, which is titled Friendly reminder that videos that are now acknowledged to be real by the US government were leaked a decade earlier to a conspiracy forum where they were convincingly, quote unquote, debunked. Some key points we have are real skepticism is not just doubting everything you see, it's also doubting your own doubt critically. We all have our own biases. Media claiming to depict UFOs should be examined carefully and extensively. The least we can do is to accept that a reasonable explanation can always be found, which is exactly how authentic leaks were dismissed as debunked fakes following a very logical investigation. Ask yourself sincerely, what sort of video evidence will you confidently accept as real? If the 5 observables are our supposed guidelines, although quite obviously we can't accept that most authentic sightings most likely don't have them, would a video that ticks all these boxes convince you it's real? Or would you understandably be more tempted to consider it to be fake, considering how unnatural to us these 5 observables may seem? The truth most likely is already here somewhere, hiding in plain sight. This original thread should be a cautionary tale. A healthy dose of skepticism is always needed. But just because something is likely to be fake does not mean it is fake, and definitely does not mean it is debunked. Well said, in my opinion.
The case that this person is talking about, the fact that the Nimitz video, the FLIR video, was posted on above top secret forums in 2007. I was on above top secret back in the day, and I remember reading a lot of this stuff. I'm trying to remember if I read this exact post or story about the FLIR 1 video. There's a really good analysis that someone posted in 2023 called "The Mysterious Origins of the Nimitz UFO Video." This is a post also on above top secret forums that links back to the original. One thing that is pointed out is that when the FLIR video was uploaded to the internet, it was uploaded to a German film student website. And when people first downloaded that FLIR video, the fact that it was hosted on a German film student website gave people skepticism, which is why they thought it was CGI. And that was the commonly accepted debunk at the time in 2007. So I think this just really speaks to the importance of chain of custody and provenance when it comes to evidence. When those videos came out in 2017 from Lou Elizondo, from the Pentagon, from ATIP, that had a lot more weight and credibility than someone on the internet who had uploaded it to a film site.
I think this post really gets at the fact that debunking something shouldn't be a binary. It shouldn't be it is debunked or it's not debunked. It's providing evidence toward or away from getting rid of the debunking something. So I don't think people should ever write a sighting or a post or whatever off as being debunked and then put it, it's gone forever. People should be a little bit more measured about it and say, here's the evidence for and against. This appears to be pretty likely bunk or not. But I just think there's a little bit too much of a binary thinking with a lot of people in the sub in general.
Mm-hmm.
My thoughts exactly. There was a book that I just started reading called The Half-Life of Facts. It was mentioned in a podcast, but it talks about that there, just like there's a half-life for some radioactive elements, there's also a half-life for facts. And like you said, that debunking is not necessarily binary, but not only that, but if you kind of look at us as a snapshot in time, it's likely that half of the things that we call facts now in 100 years' time won't be facts. But it's kind of an interesting concept. But I like that line of thought, especially when researching this, something that's outside of the edge of human knowledge. It's anomalous because we can't explain it. It doesn't happen in our everyday lives, so to speak.
Yeah, good point. One thing I noticed in the comments, if our listeners aren't familiar, there's a famous debunker known as Mick West. There's a comment about him and how, believe it or not, Mick West is the only prominent debunker who actually noticed a problem and was honest enough to call it out regarding how quickly some videos can get debunked. I know that we have a lot of readers on the subreddit and commenters that like to give him flack, but he tries, I guess, his best in that regard to not immediately dismiss.
Yeah, I think Mick is pretty good about being humble to a degree. He does annoy me with his like not looking into historical history of UAP at all necessarily. He's not into it as far as I'm aware, but he will say this seems to be mostly debunked or, mostly bunk, etc. He doesn't say it's for sure, write it off. And he does admit mistakes if he makes a mistake. So 2 thumbs up for Mick West.
Yeah, I think he approaches things respectfully, and most of what I talked about the Afghanistan video was based off some of Mick's work and assessment. I think that what's important is that he never resorts to ad hominem attacks. He always kind of goes at the evidence itself and tries to maintain a constructive dialogue, provide useful information, and so forth, just related to the evidence itself.
Yeah, and I just want to caveat what I just said, because people will probably hate me for giving thumbs up to Mick West, but, I do think that he's ultimately wrong about the topic as a whole. There are anomalous phenomenon that can't be explained by him necessarily, and him dismissing the whole topic, he's wrong. So just keep that in mind.
I do think that his attitude towards believers or people that are a little bit more hesitant towards being skeptical is he can be a bit harsh for sure in the overall conversation.
Yeah.
I used to dislike skepticism because for some reason it feels like they're an enemy, so to speak. But when they come with receipts, so to speak, or they actually do some investigation and leave me with something that allows me to find the conclusion myself, I find that useful. But for Mick West, I just see his perspective from the skeptic, and he's biased just like I'm biased. I'm biased that I think there is something truthful to this, and I want to know now. And so my emotions sometimes will get in the way. And so I think it's good to have these different personalities, even if sometimes they're irksome, because it helps us to at least maybe it kind of helps us try to triangulate the truth, if that makes sense. At least that's my perspective.
Yeah, I like the fact that we're all looking for truth, and being able to explain certain videos only makes the ones that are more interesting rise to the top.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I'd say the vast majority of sightings are bunk, ultimately, or not anomalous, huge amount. So it takes a lot of work to get through those to find something really good.
That's true.
That's how I came across this sub, was because I was looking for a source, the signal to noise ratio, right? I was looking for a high. And this subreddit was the highest signal to noise ratio that I could find. And so that's what attracted me to our UFOs. And that's what they asked me like almost a year ago when I was applying to become a moderator. And I said, well, this is kind of, I see as it's better than some others, and I want to volunteer and do my part, which I think that, it's cool to pursue after truth, and that's a worthy cause, I think.
Absolutely. That's why I enjoy and respect the subreddit as well. I think the readers really, and commenters in the upvote downvote system, do a great job of kind of filtering through that noise. And we have a lot of people that, are users that are in special fields and can provide their own opinion, where you don't really have a lot of areas on the internet where that you can bring in all these different types of people together to discuss it. So it's pretty cool. With that, so the number 3 post here we have is Pentagon says UFO nearly crashed into commercial airliner above New York as bombshell report is released. The submission statement from the OP is the Pentagon has released a new report on UFOs that reveal hundreds of documented incidents of unidentified and unexplained aerial phenomena. While there is no evidence to suggest that these UAPs, the government's term for UFOs, are of extraterrestrial origin, some defy explanation, including a near miss between a commercial airliner and a mysterious object off the coast of New York. The report comes as public interest in UAPs has skyrocketed, prompting the U.S. government to work to provide some answers about these strange objects.
The report in question here is an Arrow report. I just feel like there's a lot that could be said about Arrow itself. Maybe we can go into it and circle back to it later, but it feels a lot like Project Blue Book to me. I think the idea behind Arrow, like Senator Gillibrand's heart was in the right place when she tried to create a permanent office out of the UAP task force, but it seemed like the UAP task force was doing good work, and it seems like Arrow is doing kind of cover-up work, to put it bluntly.
Yeah, Blue Book 2.0 is like what I've heard a lot of people refer to it as.
It is, yeah. The paragraph that contains this information in the actual report is really short. It's only 3 sentences. So I figure we might as well just read it. Section E, flight safety issues. Of the 392 FAA reports received during the reported period, only 1 report mentioned a possible flight safety issue during the event. In this instance, a commercial aircrew reported a near miss with a cylindrical object while over the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of New York. Arrow continues its research into and analysis of this case. So that's basically the whole post. Which kind of reminds me of that famous picture from, I think, Italy. Black and white photo of a cylindrical object taken from the air. Looked pretty anomalous. Could be a weather balloon of some kind. It's hard to say.
It reminds me of the periscope image. I actually don't even know the history of that periscope image. There's a triangle and then there's a cigar. Are you guys familiar with what I'm talking about?
I think, Are you talking about the USS Trepang, 1970?
It sounds right.
Okay. Yeah. So I kind of side with John Greenwald. Well, it's actually not from John Greenwald. It's posted on the Black Vault. The analysis is by someone else. But there's an analysis of those USS Trepang photos. They are probably naval targeting balloons that are used as targets for torpedoes. Also, one of the images in that data set is a clear Photoshop. There's an example of the Photoshop clone tool being used on this part of the water, mist, smoke, and then the exact same appearance is in another part of the photo. And so some of them also, like the triangle shaped one, kind of appears to show Fata Morgana effects when you look at the horizon on the water and you get that ghost ship kind of effect. So I think it's a combination of things: of Fata Morgana, naval targeting balloons, and a clear Photoshop job that shows that at least that particular set of images. I don't subscribe to the story that they were from. I think the legend is that they're from the USS Trepang in 1971 in the Arctic. I kind of believe the post on the Black Vault, which goes very in depth into that particular set of photos, which were first published in, I believe, a French magazine, a French UFO magazine. But I to the Arrow report, that we can't go through the November podcast without talking about the hearings, and it feels funny to talk about the Arrow one for the one in the House of Representatives with Nancy Mace. It feels like it's right there in the name, All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. They're looking to resolve cases. They're not looking to say that something is truly anomalous. Anything that can possibly be identified or debunked or marked as prosaic, they're going to do that, and they're going to hang it on their flagpole of, look, we're doing our job, we're resolving the cases. That leaves so much to be desired, just like Blue Book did, where they focus on the cases they can resolve when there's actually this not insignificant number of cases that are truly anomalous.
Yeah. And the first director of Arrow had Susan Goff. Susan Gao.
Yeah,
I think it's Go.
I think.
I don't know.
She was sitting right behind, Kirkpatrick last year, and then this year again, breathing down the neck of the new director. Kind of just out of the main shot, but she's just like mean mugging him from 4 feet away. Like, it's strange. At least the new director did talk about some really anomalous sounding cases, regardless of Susan being right next to him. But there's still, I sense that he was kind of nervous. And I just wonder why she is there. She wrote her thesis on psychological operations in school. And is that what she's still doing? I don't know.
Wow.
She's the PR director for the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And I think his name, John, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right, Kozlowski or something to that effect, the new director. And at the very end, he managed to sneak in the term legacy programs. He goes, we want to encourage people to continue to come to us with evidence of the so-called legacy programs or something like that. It's reportedly people have, but we hear stories from certain people that they have gone and talked to Arrow, and then we hear from Arrow that no one's gone and talked to them. So it's
sketchy.
Yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact: I went to the same high school as Sean Kirkpatrick.
Wow.
Just a little fun fact about Dodo.
Did you look up his name in the high school yearbook and it said most likely to lie in front of Congress?
Yeah, that was the tagline at the bottom. Yeah. So our next one, I think, is obviously the talk of the town right now, outside of drones and everything that's going on recently. We have titled post of Representative Nancy Mace displays the official 12-page Pentagon document of Immaculate Constellation, which is entered into the congressional record. A submission statement was provided linking to another Reddit post, which has a lot of great links and information there regarding the Constellation report. And I noticed, just to throw my 2 cents in here before I pass it off to you fine gentlemen, I love that we have a new acronym. I don't think, unless, you guys have seen this before, but technologies of unknown origin being the new fun word. We have NHI, UAP, and now TUO. So that was one of the first things that jumped out to me, besides the obvious Immaculate Constellation sounding like the Immaculate Conception. But
you also showed me a cool resource.
Yeah, so what you're referring to is the Electric Freedom of Information Act electronic reading room. All government agencies actually have a FOIA reading room, so you can go and search documents. The CIA's FOIA electronic reading room is by far the largest database that I've seen, and is easily searchable through the advanced search section. I like to look up stuff like telepathy or consciousness, and you can see all these amazing documents about like these programs and CIA intelligence agencies looking into stuff like that. But when I looked into technologies of unknown origin, there were a few hits on it, but I always love having a new search term to search databases with. So
technologies of unknown origin, or TUO, is a term that it's been around a little bit. It was also defined in the UAP Disclosure Act as one of the terms in there. One that I thought was interesting, there's a term that NORAD supposedly used, non-attributed objects, temporarily non-attributed objects, something like that. Things that are tracked, they're not attributed to a particular country. So some of these are really interesting, especially when you go into the reading rooms and use search terms like that.
I honestly thought it was a little bit of a not as much information this hearing comparing it to Grush. But I do think it was a move in the positive direction for disclosure.
Yeah, we did have some readers and commenters that were a little disappointed in the hearing. But I mean, when you look at the document, Immaculate Constellation, I mean, we're being told that this is an unacknowledged special access program. So we finally have a name for it. established following the public disclosure of ATIP and AWASP, or not AWASP, but AAWSAP programs by Lou Elizondo in 2017. And upon disclosure to Congress, it was determined that this USAP and its collateral information have not been lawfully reported. So we finally know the name of the program that Grush was referring to. And then, of course, the reference to reproduction vehicles.
I think the big takeaway from the hearing was the Immaculate Constellation document. Having that entered into the congressional record, Nancy Mace being come at me, bro,
I guess. But,
and the document itself goes into a lot of detail. It's not known who authored it, but this is someone who, it seems, worked on the UAP task force, knew about this Immaculate Constellation program that started in 2017 after the New York Times article. Immaculate Constellation, being an umbrella program that has other programs inside of it, is designed to kind of sequester all of the data related to UAP before it gets distributed on U.S. government military computer networks, kind of catch it all before it makes it into distribution. We were talking about the things that are described, the specific videos that the author of the document saw. One thing that I hadn't seen before was OPIR, overhead persistent infrared. So that was it seems like maybe that's a satellite system that sees an infrared and captures video. And the videos that the author had seen were this overhead persistent infrared looked at infrared signatures of UAP. There's a number of those described in the document. The document describes spheres. It describes disks. It describes triangles, which it refers to as reproduction vehicles, and it talks about how in the computer system there was intelligence analysis that went with some of these videos at the task force, and that the intelligence analysis of some of these triangles was that they were reproduction vehicles, both ours and foreign adversaries' reproduction vehicles. You know, to have someone from within the government give that document to Congress so that through intermediaries so that it can be entered into the congressional record. I think that's the real meat of the hearings. Rear Admiral Timothy Gallaudet had some interesting things to say as well. He mentioned some stories that I had also seen him say in documentaries about interactions he'd heard about with USOs, unidentified submerged objects, one moving at torpedo speed up to a sub, stopping, following the sub, and then moving away at rapid speed. There were also, I mentioned in the last podcast, a couple of the stories from the Immaculate Constellation document. The one about the orange sphere that appeared above a Navy vessel, that the surface of it looked like it was broiling like the surface of the sun. That was in the Immaculate Constellation document. The other one that was also in the newspaper article was about the 3 to 6 spheres that surrounded a fighter jet, including one that tracked with the fighter jet as it tried to make evasive maneuvers. Yeah, so the one that wasn't mentioned previously was this dark sphere that appeared by a military base and had some type of optical distortion around the dark sphere. People said they got headaches looking at it. That was the one that hadn't been mentioned before. I could go on and on. In particular about the sightings of the videos and the human intelligence sightings that were reported by military individuals.
I just wanted to point out something that other readers had pointed out. We were able to actually kind of tie certain shapes to certain potential origins, I guess. So that I thought was pretty interesting. A lot of people have reiterated that.
I thought it was really cool that in the breakdown of the different shapes that they described, the different shapes had different characteristics. Some of the shapes had biological effects, some of them didn't. Some of them had slightly different movement and acceleration profiles, different sizes, different frequency. The triangles were reported as being quite rare, but they were also described as being reproduction vehicles. Similar to the Grush hearings, this stuff has been in the lore for decades, but we're finally getting it confirmed and getting it confirmed in front of Congress. It's really
such a big deal. That's such a big deal, isn't it? Like, I guess we're all just like straight faced, but it is.
Absolutely.
I wonder what David Marler thinks about the information in here about triangle UFOs, UAP, because that's his bag. And I don't think I've ever heard him make an allusion to them being reproduction vehicles, ever.
The YouTuber UAP Gerb has a really good video that came out recently on the triangles. He largely talks about Edgar Fouché, who spoke at MUFON about him having worked at Area 51 and having had a number of sources come to him to talk about what he called the TR-3B, or Tactical Reconnaissance Flying Triangle. As it's described, this is the one that we've seen video of with the 3 lights on the corners, the one reddish or orange light in the center, described in the Belgian UFO wave of the late 80s and early 1990s. One other thing that I think is interesting is that one of the things that I like to do is look at sightings data. And when you look at the shapes that have been reported to New Fork, going back, the percentage of sightings historically are mostly discs. And then there's a brief period where triangles are the most reported shape. And again, it's like the early 90s. In the decades since, everything is a sphere or an orb.
Yeah, that's interesting. I also thought it was cool how there was a reference made to UAP being pretty difficult to distinguish with your eyes, and through their various, signals intelligence and imaging intelligence, they are able to see both UAP and the effects in the atmosphere. So they have some kind of signature just, sort of in the air itself. So it just makes me think that human sightings are very rare because they're often unobservable, straight up. And it kind of reminds me of an old Lou interview where he said he made a reference, an allusion to a single device that would allow you to detect UAP, but he didn't go into it. I mean, I just have to imagine it's either full spectrum, broadband imaging, infrared, something beyond human perception that's getting extra frequencies. It also makes me think that might be a bit of a reason, perhaps, why the top of the line infrared have always been held back from consumer consumption for a long time. They always wait like a decade before they give us the next iteration of infrared. If a lot of people had infrared, because it's very expensive, it's difficult to get, and they're looking out randomly in the sky, what would they see?
Yeah.
Have you seen the person that was on, I think, Matt Ford's Good Trouble show, where they actually talked about, it was either a Nikon camera. There's a company that took off the IR filter and made full spectrum cameras. And there's anecdotal evidence of just pointing the camera outside for 10 minutes, you might see one of the observables. And they said that this was pretty regularly. Of course, what they're talking about, I think, still had a price tag of about $5,000, because I think the camera was $2,500, and then to retrofit it is another $2,500. If you ever try to take apart a camera sensor, it's not the most easy thing to do. But I'm interested in seeing how many people have actually done that adjustment to make their camera full spectrum, because they were saying that it's pretty darn easy to capture an anomalous object in the sky that's not on flight tracker with a full spectrum camera. But the difficult thing that the guy said in the interview was actually focusing right. So they literally told you, have the infinite focal distance or things like that, just because the objects that you're going to capture, that's kind of one of the harder aspects of it, is the focus.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say from my limited experience trying to film UFOs, I do it a lot, but still limited compared to other people. You want to go to infinite focus and then just slightly back. Just take your finger and go slightly back from infinite, because infinite's past the stars. It's too far for really anything. And I do wonder what the difference between a camera with a modified filter, like a full spectrum camera and a infrared purpose-built tube is, because those have, pretty advanced electronics that are, using some kind of tube to amplify certain spectra. Yeah.
I think it's even analog. Like it's like analog electrical somehow. And they use fiber optic cables. Yeah, they're very reserved on how much they tell you about that technology.
One of the things on my Christmas list is a $70 night vision monocular that shoots night vision video in 4K with 8 times zoom, and it records it to an SD card. Now, it might be kind of cloudy where I am, but...
Did you say $70?
Yeah. I can send you the link.
I am skeptical, but get it and let me know how it is.
Okay, yeah.
One more post here. Video showing an extremely close-up view of a disc saucer UAP. The surface of the craft perfectly matches the description in the Immaculate Constellation Document. Dynamic, roiling, like the surface of the sun with intense luminosity, which I think we referenced a little bit ago. There's a sticky comment from one of the mods, MK Ultra Escapee. So this is not a saucer. You can tell by just looking at it. Secondly, this is not what the object actually looked like. This is just what the camera picked up. This can happen to a video of the sun peeking out behind a hole in the clouds, I guess, or some other bright light in the sky, like a Chinese lantern or whatever. And because the aperture of blades of the camera make a diamond shape, that's what an out-of-focus light looks like on that particular camera. As parenthetical phrase is, this is not to say that what the light actually is, only addressing the diamond shape it takes on when out of focus in this case.
Yeah, bless MK Ultra. It reads a little bit silly, but I just love him. When he does these kind of like info dump comments, it's great. And obviously this is a camera artifact. It doesn't necessarily say that it's not a UFO, although if you look at similar videos, I think he lists one here for a Chinese lantern with the same camera artifact. It looks pretty much identical. I mean, this one's a bit brighter. Maybe it's something anomalous, but even in this video, it starts really, really bright. It dims down, and then it slowly descends behind the trees, which is, exactly what you would see with a Chinese lantern. So, I hope the sub as a whole can become more familiar with camera artifacts, get a little bit more learned on, how cameras work, what we're looking at when we're filming something. We do have millions of new users, so it's an uphill battle, but I think MK Ultra is he's doing God's work here.
Yeah, this particular camera artifact is been known as bokeh. It's a Japanese term. Yeah, it has to do with the aperture of the camera and how, as it moves, the shape of things that are out of focus, lights that are out of focus will appear to the camera. I think that's accurate. It's also, he clarifies, I'm not saying what the object is. I'm just saying what the optics are. So it's still an unidentified object. It's still a blurry whatever it is, but just saying that it's not actually diamond shaped. That's just the shape of the lens.
Oh, good deal.
Another reason why I like this sub, though, is because some of these things you wouldn't know, and when people do these dumps or when they actually investigate, it makes kind of investigating fun, because sometimes I get to discover things rapidly because multiple people are researching the same thing at the same time. And so I didn't know that this was actually bokeh at first. I was like, I was amazed, again, because I always want to inherently believe that I'm looking at something new. But yeah.
Typically, we like to leave some room for bonus content, maybe some moderator favorites of the past month, posts that maybe weren't up to the top 5, but...
So I went to the Seoul Foundation conference last month, and I could talk about that. I actually just emailed them to ask if I had permission to post some of the notes that I took during the conference. one of the things that we did was we got to see a preview of James Fox's The Program. I thought it was excellent. I highly recommend it. I thought they handled a number of whistleblowers and people very well. It does make frequent use of a couple of videos of diamond-shaped UAPs that were filmed from planes above Colombia. And I know that Colombia has a culture of balloons, of launching balloons during festivals and things like that. 10 days ago, there was a post with the title, I believe the new viral video of a supposed UAP filmed from inside an airplane is actually a balloon. Take a look at the video below. And it's a video of a plane approaching of what appears originally as a diamond UAP, and then as it gets closer, you can see that it's a balloon. And I've seen other videos of these balloons that are launched in Colombia. They're made of paper. They're thermal balloons. Now, I don't know what these diamonds above Colombia are. I don't know. People talk about the altitude, like, is it too high to be one of these balloons? But I am curious because those two videos are shown in the documentary, whether they're genuine, because again, I want the genuine stuff. One thing that I will say about something that came up at Seoul is that Eric Davis said that there are no reproduction vehicles because we've been unsuccessful in reverse engineering the craft. So that's what his statement is.
I want to give a little spotlight to not just a post, but a comment called Multiple Reports from Pilots Tonight, December 7th through 8th, 2024, near Eugene, Oregon. They were moving fast and at altitudes ranging from 15,000 up to 50,000 and at speeds not possible in manned aircraft. No radar signature. Buried down in the comments, downvoted to oblivion, was Flarkey, and a bunch of comments giving him abuse. He posted to a Medebunk thread where he shows pretty convincingly that they are Starlink flares. You can watch the video in the post. It doesn't display the characteristics that the pilot is describing. They look like Starlink flares. Later, he texted his videos to the ATC back in Eugene, and he posted them to Imgur, and you look at all of those videos, they all look like Starlink flares. They're all moving in straight lines. They fade in, get bright, fade out. They're reddish to whitish. So I just wanted to give Flarkey some love because he's doing good work. And if you casually browse through that post, you will never see his comment.
Thinking of thankless physicians, we do have an announcement that we posted to the subreddit, just a reminder. I don't know if we want to move on to that. But the moderator's primary role here is to enforce rules. And whilst we enforce rules around sightings quality, we do not curate or judge a sightings authenticity. It is our job to enable the community to do that themselves. And that's kind of pinned to our subreddit right now. And we provide details and more information about that. But a beautiful way that another moderator explained it to me is that we are janitors of the subreddit, not necessarily UFO investigators. We clean up the mess so that everybody else can be the UFO investigator. And so just to make it clear, if you see something on the subreddit that's highly outvoted that you're like, that is clearly flares, don't come running, and if all the appropriate information is provided about it, location, date, time, we're going to allow it to leave up, just downvote it, tell people in the comments that it's flares, and move on to some other really great posts because there's so much out there. But just know that we are not UFO investigators. We're just enthusiasts and janitors.
I think people usually use janitors as a derogatory comment towards us, but I'm glad you feel inspired by it.
I'm very inspired by it. Everybody, you don't realize how much you need a janitor until the janitor is gone.
For sure. I like hall pass
I prefer custodian.
Yeah.
Custodian.
Yeah. Stinger brought up that went to the Sol conference, but there's some really neat connections that were had amongst a group of subreddits. I'm really honored to be able to help with and excited to have a James Fox AMA that's going to be live and live streamed. And there will be one or possibly more whistleblowers who I don't believe have made a public appearance in this form or fashion. I am really excited about it because multiple subreddits are working together. I'm more than ecstatic about the whole thing, and that's going to be coming out soon. This podcast will probably air before that. It's on the 20th at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and it could go for as long as 3 hours. We're going to be collecting those questions ahead of time, trying to do a round robin of sorts to make sure that everyone's questions gets fairly a chance to be answered. And I'm going to be excited, and I hope that you join us for that.
Awesome.
Yes, please do. It's going to be exciting. We want to hear from you, our readers. Share your own UFO sightings, questions, or topic ideas. If you enjoyed this episode, of course, please subscribe, leave a review, and join us next month for more top discussions from our UFOs. Till next time.
What's our sign off?
Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
Yeah.
Live long and prosper.
Something like that.